I'd like to thank you for tuning in and welcome you back to my channel. Once again, I'm Noxz, and today we're doing the finale of my Alisa Breakdown. Throughout the finale, we're going to be covering mind games and setups, so ways to trick your opponents into ducking, okie traps, ways to reset your opponent at the end of combos, things like that. This was originally supposed to be just one video for the finale. I have broke it up into two parts because of the fact I have so much to say on the subject. So rather than cutting out information for you guys, instead I'm going to have one video that's just about setups and mind games to do without walls, so entirely wall-less options, and then part two will cover everything to do with the wall. So let's go ahead and get things started here. The first thing I want to cover is back one. Now back one is really good for a lot of reasons. Has a lot of range, it's a mid, -5 on block, +8 on hit. So what that means, if we're fighting someone and they're overly aggressive and they like to push buttons, after you hit with back one, you can do while standing two, and that's going to launch them because of our frame advantage. Now that is -13, so just keep that in mind. If you would like a safer option, you could do something like while standing 4. Now, while that's not going to launch them, it is going to give you that extra damage and interrupt them if they push a button, but be completely safe if they don't push a button. So it's just, again, depending on your opponent. But what makes this move really good is it allows us access to while standing moves. So again, we have things like while standing 4 after, while standing 2, any of her while standing moves. But because we're put in that crouch state for a second, we could do something like full crouch down forward 1+2. Now that's really good to do off back one, because a lot of times if your opponent pushes a button to try and punish that, even though it's not punishable, a lot of people will try and jab it. You're going to go into that low and you're going to crush their high with the low. Now the low is 26 damage and it's -11, so keep that in mind. If they do block it, it is unsafe, but it's not very unsafe, but it is unsafe. And it's +5 on hit. So something that I like to do is if I notice that this hits them, I'll immediately do up forward 1+2. And the reason I do that is to get into my opponent's head early on. So if we're doing up forward 1+2, there's only two things they can do after this hits them, right? They're either going to try and push a button to hit you out of the jab, right? And if they do something, if you notice they're doing something like that, then you do standing 4, because standing 4 is safe and it's going to give you full combo on counter hit. And if they push a button, because of the frame advantage, we're going to get counter hit after that. But a smarter player, they're going to want to duck the throw, right? So if they're wanting to duck the throw, then you can do something like a hop kick, right? And that, because of our frame advantage, and that move is, her hop kick is technically 15 frames. That's going to beat most of their options. If they do decide to push a button except the jab, it'll trade with the jab, but it will definitely hit them if they're ducking right after that immediately, and then that leads to a whole bunch of damage as well. So that's really good. Another good thing to do off of this, if you notice they're ducking, it's especially good by the wall, is you would just do back 2-4 immediately, and that's going to catch them if they're ducking. So those are kind of your options to do if they're ducking. And again, I do this early on just to see what my opponent does the next time I do it. And if they like to duck, then you understand something about their habits, and they're going to try and duck a lot. So you can just use that to your advantage. But the real thing here is they're going to want to start to block this, right? Now because that's -11, like I said before, we can get punished. But because they want to block that, that allows us access to something really cool. So once you get them blocking that low, because they're afraid of all those other things that happen after, you can do while standing 1+2 after back one. Now this is really good because it tracks, it's a mid, and it's completely safe, right? So just press it, for the record, don't hold it, because if you hold it and you do all those spins, they can get a button in between all that. So just keep that in mind. You just want to press it rather than hold it. So, but what makes that cool is this move alone is 24 damage, right? So because that move alone is 24 damage, and we've been over how this hits at tip range, that's guaranteed, so that's 48. So, you do the math there, it's 72 damage if those two things are put together. So, because of the way this hits, it leaves them at that perfect range to hit for tip. Now the computer blocked it because I have them set to guard, but As you can see right there was that perfect tip range. So if they don't block that low, they're getting that extra 48 damage. So you just mix them up because they wanted to duck after this because they're afraid of this, right? So we hit them with this, and then when that hits them and they're getting up, they have to get up into that. So if they're not blocking low right as they're getting up, then they're going to get hit by that, and because that leaves us perfect tip range, we're going to get, that 48 damage. Oops. Allowing for 72 damage all in all. So again, really good. Really good. So that's just a good way to sneak in 72 damage, and 72 damage, that's like a combo's worth of damage, a good combo's worth of damage, just off of 3 hits. All because that will happen sometimes. You seen what just happened right there, how they're like off axis. The reason that happens is because you're doing down 3 a little too early. You gotta wait just a fraction of a second longer. So I'm happy that happened, just so I can note that. But again, we're turning their fear of back 1, full crouch, down forward 1+2 into 72 damage because they got hit by that and they didn't react to that low. And if they do happen to react to the low, because again, these are setups, so none of this is guaranteed. If they do react to that low because it hits a tip damage, we're -9 and completely safe, and it's no worries. Now, I would like to say one more thing off of back 1. We have this throw setup, so down back 1+2 immediately after the back 1. That's really good too. Anything used too much will obviously get you in trouble, so just keep that in mind. But if they haven't seen that from you yet, it's a good way to close out the round, especially if they're not acclimated to our whole mix up and everything we just went over. And they know that it's not unsafe. They're gonna block that and want to just stand guard. So in that situation, it's a really, really good throw setup. There's a few other throw setups involving that throw we'll get into a little bit later on, but I definitely wanted to mention that. So the next thing I want to talk about is a spike. Well, one of her spikes actually off of back 4-3, which used to bound. Now it does this new kind of spike animation. So normally off down forward 2, we would do whatever our down forward 2 combo is, right? So instead of doing that, which is 60 damage and good, if we want to try and set our opponent up for more damage, we can do something like this. Now, because it has that kind of spike thing there, if your opponent is not holding back, now keep in mind, if they hold back, then they're going to get right up from that. But if they don't get up properly and they do any other kind of thing to try and get up, we can do something like this. We can throw a down 3 in there. Now, down 3 is 13 damage after, let's see, after 46, right? So that's 59 damage from those 3 hits. 1 damage less than, than our actual combo. But what's really cool about it, and what I like to do, is it's another situation where after that down 3, you're at tip range again. So let's see if I can make him not block so we can actually see this. All right. So they're at that perfect tip range. So we just went from 59 into 48 damage, that's 107 damage. So we turned this, which is normally 61 damage, roughly 61 damage, guaranteed off of that, into an actual setup, which can lead to 107 damage. So again, we throw this spike in there. We get this down 3. Now this first down 3, I've never seen no one get out of that. So I don't know if it's just guaranteed. I don't want to tell you guys something's guaranteed that's not. So that needs a little bit more testing. But I play a lot of good people that typically hold back in these situations, and I almost always get that first down 3. But again, what's really cool about it is once they get up after this, they're at that perfect range to where we get that down 3-1 again. And again, so that's 107 damage off of down forward 2 with that setup. Now, if they get smart, they're going to be able to get up and block that low, and again, we're safe. but we have something else we can do that opens them up. Now there is one way I want to briefly mention that I've seen people get out of this just all around. So that's why setups depend a lot on your opponent and the situation. But instead of getting up backwards like that, like standing straight up after that, if your opponent like tech rolls, like rolls towards the screen or away from the screen, then they will avoid the whole end of this altogether, no matter what you do. So just keep that in mind. But if they're standing right up, which a lot of people will do, especially after getting hit again on the, for free on the ground like that, they're going to be holding back because they want to stand right up. In that situation, the down 3-1 immediately after that is at that perfect range to where if they do not block the down 3, we're going to get that 48 damage, making the grand total of this whole thing 107 damage. Really good. I mean, I've used that in real matches, and it's gotten me, rounds before. Because, again, it's a lot of damage off of something kind of they don't see a lot. No, I don't think a lot of Alisa players use setups and things like this. So the next cool thing you can do is you can do this. Now, if they're getting up and they want to block the low, because down 3 puts us immediately into backup stance, we could do something like that. Now, that's going to work great, like I said, if they're getting up blocking low. That's going to hit them, and then that is another combo starter, if you're good at that combo. It's really hard. I have it in my combo video, my showcase video, if you want to check it out. But if you can land that combo, so let's see if I can do it. If you can land that combo, that is so much damage. Again, that is really hard to do. A lot of execution involved in getting that entire reset. But that grand totals out at 139 damage. So you need a lot of space for that. So again, it's definitely situational, and it is very high execution because that dash has to be perfect to where you end the dash to where your down 3 is going to hit at tip range on the last roll off of this right here. So their last roll, you have to be at tip range for down 3-1 to hit. So it's very complicated, but it takes a lot of execution practice. But if you can get really good at that, it's a way to 139 damage is almost in someone's entire life bar, and that's off of down 4 too. So really, 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 really good thing if you can do. Otherwise, it's still good because if they're getting up to block that low and you don't want to do the combo, it still makes it 79 damage. So it's still really good because you get, or no, is it 89? Let's see. So 59 into 30. Yeah, so it's still 89 damage. If they get up trying to block that low, you're still going to get 89 damage out of it instead of the... So the next thing I want to cover is up 4-3-2 at the end of a combo. Now I have it set up right now to be on counter hit because I want to give you an example of a way you can actually use this. So off magic 4, we can do something like this. Right? And that's going to allow us to up 4-3-2 at the end of the combo. Now if you pay attention, it leaves them right in front of you. So they're like getting up right in front of you no matter what. Their only real options are get up, stay down, or roll, right? So if they stay down, roll, or get straight up, we can do something like this. We can do down back 4, okay? Now that's going to beat all 3 of those options. Now if they like to get up ducking after that, that's really good for us too, because then we can just hop kick, right? Because if they want to get up ducking, then we're just going to hop kick them, okay? And then we're going to start a whole combo off of that. So that's, the down back 4 is a way to make your opponent want to get up ducking off of that so that they can block that low and launch you, because down back 4 is launch punishable, right? So that's ways to punish them for waking up ducking. Obviously, your safer option is back through 4. Be careful though, it doesn't jail. They can't duck that second high. But if they get up ducking, it's natural and they're going to get hit. Especially good with their back towards the wall. So you have those. Another thing you could do off of it, if they wanted to maybe get up and push a button. Like say they wanted to do a get up kick, we would just do up 4-3-2 again, right? That's going to crush their get up kick. It's going to give us the counter hit, so it'll give us 48 damage off of that. and it'll leave them, you know, if that ever happens to where they're like that, you can actually get a down 4 off of that. So you can do something like down 4, right, and get that extra little 14 damage at the end. So that's what you want to do if they're doing like a get up kick. Now, if you go for something like the up forward, you know, 3-2, and they do the get up kick that's the mid, then that will beat that sometimes. So just watch out for that. But in those situations, if they want to get up doing something like that, then we can do what I would recommend at least is to do something like this. You just backdash, right? And then whiff punish them accordingly, right? That's what I would recommend if you notice they want to get up. That's especially good because what a lot of people like to do, at least in my experience, is they'll do the spring kick. Oops. They'll do the spring kick because it leaves them on their back with their feet towards you. So again, all you have to do after that is just backdash. It'll whiff, and then you can back 3+4, launch the shit out of that. So that's kind of just a way, you know, just something I wanted to give you to help you understand like how to put things together off of that. But definitely, you know, mix up and do your own things, whatever you like, for sure. But again, you know, if they want to sleep, stand straight up, or roll, we can down back 4, okay? And that's going to beat all those options. They want to get up ducking, then we got our hop kick, right? We got our hop kick, and we got back 2-4, okay? So we got both of those to crush the mid, you know what I mean? And then if they want to get up with the get up kick low, we just do up 4-3-2 again. So that will beat that. And then if they're, the only other thing they can really do is the spring kick or the get up mid, and if they do that, then immediately after the up 4-3-2, you would just backdash. And then it's gonna whiff, and then you can punish them however you want. So that's really good. I mean, that's something I use all the time. I'll give you two other things I like to do off of it. Is I like to do the grab. If they like to stand straight up, the grab is really good, right? So they'll get that. Or another thing, and this is dirty, it's very dirty, and it's extremely risky, so keep that in mind. But I mean, you can definitely use it, god damn it, to win. And that's down 3+4, right? If you do that immediately, like while they're waking up, they're gonna have to react to it instantly in order to block it. So a lot of times they won't, and if they don't, I mean, then, you know, that's another combo starter. So that's a whole reset. You do that whole combo, and that's a whole reset right there. So that's really good. But keep in mind, extremely risky, but something you can definitely do. So that's probably one of my favorite things. I try to end most of my combos with a 4-3-2 just because of all those different options, you know. And definitely there's other things, you know, mix in your own style, see what you like to do off of it. But those are just some examples of things that I personally use. So I find that very useful in the long run because instead of, you know, going for max damage, I end it with up 4-3-2 because I get those extra opportunities at the end. And a lot of time they'll pay off. And then you start to get into your opponent's head, and once you're in their head, then you can kind of do with them what you want. You know what I mean? So definitely really good. So next here we're going to talk a little bit about sidestepping setups. So the best thing to do, as I've mentioned before, anything -4 or less on block, you can sidestep off of. So definitely look at the moves that you use, look at their frame data, see what's -4 or less, and create your sidestep setups off of those moves. For me, I like to use forward 2, and then I like to use 4-4-3. Right, because both of those moves are -4 and allow for a good sidestep opportunity. A lot of opponents will for some reason try and jab those, so I can sidestep and they'll whiff. So I want to talk about a little bit is her off access combos, right? So if you sidestep and punish with down 4-2 like right there, it's just a really weird combo. The one doesn't really hit at the end. If you try to do something different like this, the 4-2 a lot of times will whiff. Sometimes that hits, but a lot of times it'll whiff. So if you know something that's consistent of an off access down 4-2 with Alisa, please share in the comments. I would love to know. But me personally, when I sidestep and my opponent whiffs, I use up 4-4-4 to whiff punish. Because a lot of times, even off axis, this will still work. So I just do that. Now, What's really cool about up forward 4-4, if it hits on any axis, you can still get a combo. So I'll give you the best example I have is off of back turn, but again, this works at any angle. If you hit with up forward 4-4, it leaves them, you know, in that really weird kind of bound state. What I used to do is I would do this and then do this whole thing into chainsaws. And then I'd go for mix up on wake up, right? Because I wasn't sure what worked. But I found that you can do back 2-4 off of that. And it'll actually tail spin them, and then you can dash up and you can do that. Forward 4-1-4. Now it's only 54 damage, but it's guaranteed combo off of a back turn hop kick state. Because, you know, her hop kick leaves them in that weird kind of position. Also, if it hits like more from the side, this will work too, to where nothing else is going to work. So it's a really good option to have a consistent off-axis combo. I just wanted to share with you guys. So the next thing I want to talk about is her boot stance mix-up, which, you know, pretty generic. Everyone's pretty used to seeing it, and what that is it's either boot 3 or it's boot 4, right? Now, the boot 4 is incredibly launch punishable, and boot 3 is -14. So most people know that. Most people know that, you know, Bob, Kazuya, Josie, people like that, they're launching her boot 3 if they block it. But everyone's punishing it. Some characters better than others, right? And then everyone knows if they block that move, she's incredibly unsafe, and they can pretty much pick a launcher and do it. So ways to try and mix that up and to kind of sneak it in with your opponent is, I'll just use this like as an example. Any situation where you knock them down, you can fly at them, where they're forced to deal with your move while they're waking up instead of something like this. Like if you just fly at them from here, they have all kinds of time to think about what you're doing. And if they're really smart and good, they're just going to jab you anyways and float you out of all that, flying straight at them like that. So a good way to set it up again is off anything that's going to knock them down. I'm just using this as an example. Then they're forced to deal with that 50-50 while they're waking up. So one thing you can do, if you think your opponent's gonna block that low, but you're not 100% positive, not enough, you know, you don't have, your heart's not in it enough to go for something like that, because you know if you go for that and they block it, they're gonna launch you and kill you. In this situation, you can use boot 2. Now this is gonna knock them down, right? 25 damage, it's gonna hit them if they duck, obviously, right? And then you can get down 4 after if it hits like that. But what's good about it is it's safe. So if they decide not to block the low, you know what I mean, and stay standing, we're -9. So we can't start pressure, but at least we're safe and we're back kind of in that neutral state. So that's really good. Another way to kind of mix up, you know, the boot 3, boot 4 50-50 is off of up forward 3. Now, kind of like in the situation we just briefly covered where you in your combo with up forward 3-2, you're pretty sure they're going to do get up low sweep. You do up forward 3-2 again to crush it. In this situation, we would just do up forward 3 and then 3+4. Now, they're hit by that, so they're kind of recovering to that whole, you know, animation, and we're flying in already. So in that situation, again, they're forced to just react to, is he going low or is he going mid? They don't have all this time to really think about it. They just kind of have to make a guess. So that's really, those are two really effective ways of going about using the boot mix-up. Otherwise, I'd be really careful with that because, again, it's generic, something people have been dealing with for a very, very long time, kind of like a gimmick of hers, if you will. And one thing to keep in mind, too, very much so about this is both of these options, well, all 3 of these options are super sidesteppable, right? So if your opponent sidesteps any of those options, they're not going to work, and they're probably going to get a back turn combo on you and everything else. Now, her boot 1-2 does slightly track to her left, like I'm talking slightly, so you might be able to squeeze that in if you think they're going to sidestep, you know, if you're like this close, you might be able to do that. But it's better in the situation where you think they're going to sidestep is where we utilize her cancel, right? So we'll get into her cancel. So we would do something like this and then do back, right? So if they try to push a button or sidestep, we're going to be able to see that and react accordingly. Obviously, if they sidestep, then we're kind of just going to chill out, you know what I mean, and just go about to filling each other out. We're right at the range we want to be with Alisa, so we're good. But if they push a button, then we can do something like this, right? Boom, and whiff punish that, and then again, you know, we have the whole combo off that if we are able to execute it. At very least, we're getting that 30 damage off the whiff punish. And if the whiff punish is really heavy, right, then you can do something. Oops. Man. like that. That is a situation where you can squeeze that in maybe sometimes. Now, I don't really recommend it. Primarily, I don't do much after I cancel that unless I see them push a button, because you have that second where she's jumping back where you're not controlling her. So you can see what your opponent's doing and then react accordingly. Again, if they push a button, we throw that out. Now keep in mind, backup 3 is -10, so it's not safe, but it's not super punishable either. But something, like I said, that can be used like in that situation for a whiff punish. Now, another thing we can do off of this is we can fly at them and just press down. Now, if we do that, we have a few different options. Now, this is a more risky option because if they push a button, they're going to jab you out of that. There's a few things they can do, but again, like we've said before, and I'll probably say again throughout this video, setups are about the situation and your opponent and how they react to certain things. Depends on what setups you use throughout your course fighting that person. So what you can do, and I find this really good, and I use it a lot, there's 2 ways you can do this. We'll cover this one first. And you hold down, you have to wait a half a second, but you can get that grab after it. Now that's really good because, they're scared. They want to react to whatever it is, that you're doing. Because by canceling that, for all they know, you're going to go right into that, or right into the kick. But by canceling it, we're right in their face. Now you do have to wait a half a second, like I mentioned, to get that grab, because it puts us in backup. So if we just like mash down back 1+2 after the cancel, oops, we're gonna get backup 1 every time. So you can't mash down back 1+2. You have to wait to recover out of backup, so you're in normal crouch, and then you do down back 1+2. So again, really, really good in my opinion. Now the other way that you can use this cancel that's very effective is out of rage. Let me find that here. And let's go ahead and set our opponent to guard. Now, her rage drive, like we've talked about before, is best used as a whiff punisher, right? So your opponent throws something out, they whiff, you hit them with this, and Alisa gets all kinds of damage off it. She can go under her stance and whatnot, right? But because we can go off her stance off that, and we're at plus frames on this, if they block it, if we use this move in a situation where they block it, or we go to whiff punish, and it doesn't happen to catch the whiff punish, see, look, there's trucks again. I promise you. They're just non-stop driving up and down my street. But anyways, we go to punish the whiff, and we mistime it, and they block it. Well, we're still at advantage, right? So what you can do in this situation, right, is you're going into your boot stance. You have the whole normal mix-up we talked about, where am I going low, or am I going mid, right? So they have to worry about that. But what you can do is you can do something like this, right? And I mean, that is extremely effective. Works a whole lot. So keep that in mind. Those are 2 really good ways to use that off of the boot cancel. Let's go ahead and change all this back. So again, 2 really good ways to use off the boot cancel. So that's just another way to do it, to go ahead and set up to go into it, like I said, like off of the up 4-3-2. Because we want to be limited about how much we just fly in, because that's so much easier to react to. Another thing, again, we can apply all this to, like I mentioned before, is forward 1+2. Because forward 1+2 is so much advantage on hit, we can go into it and they're forced to deal with this 50-50 right away. And then all the other same options we went over applied to that as well. So again, really, really good. And those are kind of some setups and ideas of way to use the 50-50 off of the boot stance. Because, I mean, that's really what that stance is about. Is about that mind game, tricking your opponent into ducking pretty much, so you can get that boot 4. So that's good. Another thing you can do too, kind of like the same deal actually, is off of this, you can go into that grab too. So it's up to you what you want to do. And again, because we're canceling right in front of them, I mean, honestly, our options are limitless. We can go into down forward 1+2. So just get creative. There's a whole lot of things we can do off of that cancel, especially if your opponent is afraid and they want to block that whole 50-50. It really opens up our opportunities. Next thing I want to talk about here is her armor move. Now, her armor move is back forward 2, and a few good ways to set it up are anytime you're applying pressure and you have a slight amount of advantage and your opponent feels like, they feel like there's a gap in there, you can squeeze a back forward 2 in there. because it's armor, you're going to absorb the attack and hit them through it. Keep in mind, I have been jabbed out of her armor move on more than one occasion, and I was told that armor frames don't become active until the 8th frame. So I'm not 100% on that. You may want to look into that a little more for yourself if you're interested. But she will get jabbed out of it sometimes. So just keep that in mind. But for the most part, if they're doing anything other than a jab, you're going to, the armor is going to activate and you're going to hit them through it. And also remember that with the exception of this right here, triple forward 2 into forward 1+2, anytime you see that kind of stun on the ground, she gets down 4. So there's a few situations where that comes up. So just keep that in mind. If you manage to hit with that and you get that kind of stun, don't forget to get your down 4 at the end. But again, it's really good to use, especially if you're pressuring them on the wall, because you can absorb that attack and wall splat them with back forward too. But we'll get into wall stuff here in just a minute. Another thing I want to give you guys is an actual setup that I use for her armor move. I use this all the time. It's very effective. It's especially effective at the end of a round to close something out when you're both, at a little bit of life. Is I'll do back 1 while standing 4, back forward 2, right? That works so much. Whether they get hit or block both of these moves, doesn't matter. For some reason, they want to push a button after that, and back forward 2 will hit them. And if their move manages to connect with you, it doesn't matter, because again, we have armor frames, so we're going right through it, and we're hitting them with back forward 2. So that's just a setup I use for it that's really, really, really effective from my experience. Another thing that's surprisingly effective, and if you watch some of my matches, you may see it, is if you whiff forward 2 from about this range, for whatever reason, your opponent wants to attack. It's like they think they can whiff punish you, right? So a lot of times at around this range, I will whiff forward 2 on purpose and then immediately do back forward 2. And I'm telling you, that works so much. Give it a try for yourself, but whiff forward 2 at around this range, they'll try to whiff punish you and then back forward 2, and you'll stuff whatever they do. At very worst, like I said, your armor frames will activate and you'll hit them anyway. So those are the few things I just wanted to tell you about her back forward 2. So I want to give you guys one more throw setup here. It's a boot 3 into down back 1+2. It's extremely effective. I use a lot. So just keep that in mind. Just another way that you can use that throw in the setup. So the last thing we're going to talk about in this video briefly is her destructive form. Now I say briefly because I find this stance way more effective on the wall. So we'll cover it more in depth in my next video when we go over wall setups. But the main thing you want to remember when working with this stance is your primary mix-up is down 1 and standing 1. Once you get your opponent afraid to duck because they don't want to get hit with standing 1, then you can hit them with down 1 a lot more. In the open, you're going to use this stance more as just pressure and just nuisance, just chipping them away here and there, little bits here and there. And once you get them afraid of the standing 1, down 1, then you can kind of squeeze in other mix-ups. You can throw in something like forward 1+2. Now, if that hits, you get that whole combo from it. It's 59 damage. It will actually sometimes hit for 65 damage. It just depends on spacing and how many of those chainsaw hits hit on the way up before the 1 connects that spikes them down. So you have to experiment with that, but for no matter what, it's at least 59 damage. So again, if this hits, we get forward 2-1 guaranteed. So that's really good. And then they're spiked, so now we have other Oki options as well leading after that. So that's really good. But if they block it, we're +7. So if they happen to block this move and they want to push a button after, we'll do something like standing 2. If you pay attention, standing 2, she actually ducks a little bit. So she will naturally just crush some highs. So keep that in mind. And with our frame advantage, we're definitely going to duck a high, and we're definitely going to interrupt whatever they do. So what we can do is standing 2-1 is a new move they gave her where you hit 1 on hit, and she'll shoot them with the rocket. But what's super significant about that is it puts her chainsaws away, so that allows us to extend the combo. So let's see if I can get this. So that's 62 damage, really decent damage. Again, because that rocket puts the chainsaws away, it allows us for that extension. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to get that much damage. So that's a good way to set up standing 2. Another move I want to mention is forward 1. We've talked about this before. This is her fastest stance out of destructive form. Comes out in 12 frames. It's 0 on block and +11 on hit. So if they get hit by this, it's another situation where you can throw in a standing 2 and go for that whole launcher, or you can simply just do forward 1 into itself and kind of keep them locked in that frames. And if they keep pushing buttons, I mean, you just defeat them with this right here. So that's really good. Keep in mind, another thing you can do after this is forward 1 plus 2. A lot of times that'll work. Kind of be careful messing with that though, because again, there's a range thing like you saw there, it didn't launch. So you kind of want to be careful on where you put that. Another thing to mention is down 2. Now her down 2 is really good. If it hits 6 times, it's 30 damage. Otherwise, it just hits 4 times for 20. We'll get into that more in the next video because that moves way better on the wall. But that's just another low you have. So there's just a few kind of ideas I wanted to give you. Remember, when you're in destructive form out in the open, it's not really about combos. It's more about just kind of chipping away at your opponent's health little by little until they happen to touch you or you block something and it forces your chainsaws away. So the best way to create launcher opportunities for yourself are off of forward 1 plus 2 on block or forward 1 on hit. You know, those are kind of the better ways to create launcher opportunities. And again, the only true launcher she has is standing 2-1 for that. Otherwise, you do have this. So I just wanted to keep that in mind. So that wraps it up for my setup video for Alisa without walls. As always, if this helped you guys in any way, please leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. Also, please feel free to leave anything in the comments, any questions you may have. You know, definitely ask them in the comments and I will get back to you. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again next time.